Declan Clausen. Clausen or Clausen? What do you like?
Clausen. That's how my parents would say it said, but I don't mind either. Clausen's fine.
You're councillor for the city of Newcastle. Future mayor?
Maybe. We'll see what the voters decide in just over a month's time.
I think on everyone's lips at the moment is how is the containment of crocodiles in the Wallsend area?
Just wild, unbelievable, including this morning I was out, I had a street stall at Wildflower in Wallsend first thing this morning. The number of people that came up to me with different conspiracy theories as to where the crocs might have come from, including the number of crocs that are yet to be captured. And
you're saying there's more?
Well, according to the good people of Wallsend, there may be at least 2 or 3 others that are still yet to be captured. I don't know that that's the experience of the reptile park, the cops, or any of those other responders that were out first thing when it came up Friday a fortnight ago. But my goodness, crocs in the Ironbark Creek Stormwater Channel. Who would have thought?
I read somewhere where there was actually, in that same creek, there was platypus.
Yeah,
Back
right.
in the early 1920s, there was sightings. There was actually pictures.
Yes.
And I went, wow, obviously it was planted, this crocodile.
Yeah.
Hasn't the Central Coast Reptile Park, haven't they got their 20 cents?
Oh, just incredible. Like the Robert Irwin moment, the guy.
Here he is.
Incredible. What a shot.
This guy wants to be the next Steve Irwin. It's...
I'm glad he got it. That's the main thing. Jokes aside, the Ironbark Creek Stormwater Channel, downstream is Ramsar listed wetlands, like internationally significant wetlands.
Yep.
Then through Wallsend, we've got this widened concrete stormwater channel. It's not very impressive. It causes flooding. It's too constrained. And then further upstream in the catchment, council's done a whole heap of work in naturalising. It's this middle section that needs some work, but there is some wildlife. It turns out there's a croc.
Well, just to stay on that reptile park, I mean, they've been getting a lot of exposure from this. I think every day they have an update on the croc. But I mean, I worked for NBN back in 2011 on the Central Coast, and we used to do stories with them all the time. Their media department is like a machine. It's on overdrive. And when nothing happens, they make things happen.
Yes.
And 2011, I think we've got some vision of this.
And there's an angry crocodile in Australia. The big guy's name is Elvis. 16 feet long, weighs more than 1,000 pounds, and lives at a reptile park near Sydney. Yesterday, he took exception to a lawnmower and suddenly snatched it.
Let it go, let it go, let it go!
How about that? Not surprisingly, the guy pushing the mower was a bit startled.
Next second, he was attached to the end of the mower, dragging it in, almost took me into the drink with him. And
That's the
I'll tell
same
you what,
bloke.
it happened that fast and was that scary, but yeah, bloody glad to be alive.
Glad to be alive. All right, workers later used kangaroo meats.
He was happy to jump in
away
Wallsend.
so they could retrieve the mower.
Now, Declan, I can tell you now, that was bullshit. Right? They put that... There was nothing happening. It was a few days before Christmas. No, it was actually in between Christmas and New Year when nothing's happening. They put the lawnmower in there, pushed it towards him, and filmed it. Channel 9 and 7 were already there. I was like, oh, hang on, get the cameraman. No, don't worry, Channel 9's already capturing it. I'm like, what do you mean? How are they already capturing it when they don't even know what's happening?
The manufactured mower moment.
But it was almost like... And that went, I said, worldwide, BBC, America, it was everywhere. And man, you guys need something for your black butt.
Maybe. It's just making me think, though, who's behind the croc in the Wallsend Ironbark Creek Channel? Everyone's got a theory. I hadn't thought about
there you go.
The arsonist firefighter moment, but for crocs.
Bloody coasties. They're up to something. They're up to no good. They've stolen Laurie McKenna from us. But just staying on black butt, I mean, there's a few similar places around Australia like black butt, but it all costs you money to get in.
Black butt is pretty unique. And I got to say, so it was protected by the late, great Joy Cummings. She was part of the council of that era. There have been a few proposals over the years to see parts of it sold for development. The most recent of those proposals was during the Macquarie Council. There was plans at the time to see parts of the fringes of black butt split off. There was a proposal at that time in order to remove the animals from black butt. It was seen to be too expensive. Credit to former Lord Mayor Nuatali, who at the time, working with the community, was able to see black butt protected. We had a new plan of management that was negotiated and agreed with the community in at about 2013 or 14. That introduced, and it was quite contentious at the time, paid parking at black butt. But the paid parking is how we subsidise and ensure that that reserve can operate, that we've been able to invest in having animals and operating a service that is pretty unique. Local government doesn't really get involved in zoos all that often. And so having a facility like Black Butt's extremely special. During the time I've been on council, I've been really pleased to see us expand that investment even further. We've got, since I've been on council, we've invested in 2 massive new playgrounds at Black Butt, Richley Reserve and Cainey Avenue. They are absolutely gangbusters on the weekend, and every kid in Newcastle's had a birthday party, I think, at some point of Cainey Avenue. And then more recently, we've recently put in a new education hub, kiosk, an area that people can hold events. Our former Lord Mayor Kerridge wrote angrily to the Newcastle Herald describing that as a vanity project that was just for the city's beautiful people. What a load of nonsense. It's been something that has been so well utilised by Novocastrians and just goes to show the vision and investment that's necessary in great green spaces like Black Butt, which truly is, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it is the green heart of the city of Newcastle, and a space that I think most Novocastrians would be very proud of.
So you can pretty much say that if you become mayor, there will never be a fee to get in to Black Butt.
No fees to get into Black Butt. I think the contentious part, which was around introducing parking meters there, was in order to provide that subsidy. That model is working really well. Black Butt's got great visitation. A project that I'm really proud of on council is our local centre program. We've been gradually rolling those out. The most recent local centre that's just been finished is the Orchard Town Road local centre. We've just put new traffic lights in on Cainey Avenue about a fortnight ago. It is attracting even more people into Black Butt. We're investing in making the footpaths better and allowing it. Black Butt used to be somewhere that was pretty inaccessible if you weren't driving. We're trying to make it as accessible as it can be.
There you go, Dave. Chalk that down. That's the first commitment.
No fees on Black Butt.
Black Butt is free for life.
I can rule that one out nice and easy.
Okay. Now, from wildlife to wildlife of a different kind, the council chamber gets pretty heated in there at times.
It can do, but that's what does happen when you've got a whole bunch of councillors from that bring different perspectives to the chamber, and often have to debate items that are contentious. I've got to say, overall, I think the debate that we do have at council is pretty respectful. We do get along as a group of people, and that might surprise some of your listeners. But as recently as a council meeting last month, all of the council, Labor, Liberal, Independents, Greens, went and had a drink after the meeting, not on our own money, not on ratepayers' money, in order to kind of wrap up the meeting. And it just shows that there is the dynamic of council is that there is there can be moments of heat that happen in formal council meetings as we're nutting out issues and debating problems, but we are a group of people that by and large get along pretty well together with one another.
But of course they'd probably get along the most because it's a majority is Labor. Is that and that's a contentious issue with a lot of people, in regards to councils as a whole. We're not just talking about Newcastle Council, the Liberal, Labor, everyone feels that everything should be an independent. Everyone should be independent. I know you've been spruiking, going out in the streets and kissing babies and everything at the moment, but I don't know. This is just personally mine. I just don't like seeing that. I don't like seeing the red Labor thing. And it's great. I get it.
Yep.
Especially when you're spruiking yourself to be the mayor. I want you as the person, not you as the Labor Party person.
That's fair enough. So 2 points just in response to that. First off, Labor doesn't have a majority on council. We have 5 councillors out of 13. In order to get anything through the council, I need to negotiate with at least one other party. And so I negotiate every single council meeting with the Liberal councillors, with the Greens councillors and Independent councillors to find a pathway so that we get reasonable outcomes and agreement on the issues. So we're in a minority at the moment on council. Totally take the point about the red T-shirts. The reality of that is a little bit boring. This is super early in the campaign. Nominations only opened on Monday. I've got ordered shirts that say Declan. They're on their way. They just haven't arrived. And so out of the wardrobe, I've got my Labor ones until the Declan T-shirts come in.
Get rid of the red. I don't want to see any more red.
You'll be pleased that my corflute's blue. That might surprise you.
You're an engineer. Engineers solve problems. you a problem solver?
100%. And I think that has been certainly what I would like to hope comes through in the way that I've performed in public office in the 11 years that I've been on council, and the way that I approach issues in the city. The mindset that I bring as a result of being an engineer is somebody that can be quite analytical and has problem-solving abilities. But I also think I bring a whole bunch of soft skills too, of being able to bring people along with me by being able to negotiate. The other benefit I think of as being an engineer is that council really is a large infrastructure business at the end of the day. That is what we do. We operate a $450 million budget. $150 million of that every year is spent in delivering new capital works. Having an engineering mindset, given that council employs, of the 1,500 only employees in the organisation, several hundred of those people have engineering qualifications. It is pretty useful to be able to think in the similar way to what they do in order to be able to get things done for the city.
So you feel like it'd be an easy transition if you become mayor to walk away from your job?
I think it would be an interesting transition. Something that lots of people have been asking me is, there's this view that politicians get paid a lot and that I must be running for mayor because of the access to greater remuneration, and that's just not the case. And I want to be quite humble about it, but for me, I'd be taking a pay cut if I was elected Lord Mayor, but I'd be doing it because I really, really value our city. I think there's amazing potential, but I also think I have the skills that are necessary to help drive good outcomes and move the city forward and bring a mindset that's not traditional. Like lots of pollies have backgrounds in law or economics. I have some of those skills, but that's not my background. I've got a very technical background, and I think that's something that could be quite valuable for the city over the coming period as well.
Well, maybe you could donate the Lord Mayor money to charity, and you can just keep your engineering job. It's a win-win.
I think there's too much to do for the city. I don't know that there's enough hours in the day to be able to do all of the above.
Good to deflect that one. You've been deputy mayor for 7 out of the 11 years?
I was.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride?
Look, it's a great, to be honest, we have seen the challenges that Lord Mayors that don't come from having experienced any time as a ward councillor have when they try and get things done in council. In the last decade, we've had a couple of Lord Mayors that have come from outside local government and haven't had any of that experience as a councillor. They have really struggled. The unique part, I think, of my candidacy is that I have the runs on the board and the experience, having held public office for some time now. Every vote that I've taken over 11 years is on the public record. People know where I stand on an awful lot of issues, and I've seen what that role can do at its finest, and am able to continue to progress in that direction. So that's certainly, I think that I bring good experience that might be helpful for the city in the role as well.
I mean, one of the main candidates is Gavin Morris, who again, it's someone that's going into something that he probably, I don't know whether he knows what he's getting in for if he does get in, but. I mean, in the past, you see, we talked about Laurie McKenna a couple of times already, but when he entered the council in Gosford in 2013, his very first council meeting, he was elected mayor. He got up there, he didn't even know how to chair the meeting. The deputy mayor had to sit next to him to teach him how to chair the meeting, and it was a rocky start, but he became a good mayor. And again, he's had 2 shots at it because he went away, and now the Wyong and Gosford amalgamated. Now he's the Central Coast mayor, and he's the most lovable, and everyone loves him up down there. And but it's a classic case of anyone can go in there as long as they've got that commitment to do the work, and having that backing of the council is important, but. Also, too, you need to be a man of the people or a woman of the people as well.
I think that's true. And I've got a lot of time and respect for Laurie. I've known him for a long time. I knew him when he was first elected. I was on council at the same time when he was first elected on the Central Coast, and our paths have crossed numerous times over the years, including when he was up here with the Jets.
Could you understand him?
Look, most of the time. He's pretty good at repeating things, though. So I suspect that he's used to dealing with Novocastrians.
We were very close to subtitling him, to be honest. And he's not allowed in here with a kilt without anything under there.
Oh, dear God.
That was a shocker.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say, just with talking about Labor-aligned councils, I suppose there is a benefit in regards to getting things done, state and federally. But I suppose that's a benefit in a way, because you're talking to the members, the state and federal. Do you feel that's a benefit as being a Labor mayor to get things over the line?
Absolutely, I do. And so, as I said, I'm a problem solver. I want to get things done. That's why I've held the office of councillor for the time that I have. Then that's why I've put my hand up for Lord Mayor. We have a unique window at the moment where we have a federal Labor government and a state Labor government. Governments love nothing more than arguing between themselves as to who's responsible and pointing fingers. They can't do that in Newcastle. If we've got a Labor local council, a Labor state government and a Labor federal government, there is nowhere for us to hide, and the only place for us to go is to solve problems and deliver good outcomes for Novocastrians. And so I think that that is the unique thing that I bring, and being able to say to the electorate, I have the networks and the relationships with those other levels of government that can deliver good things for our city, and that might not be the case with if there was somebody else elected to the role.
Because for me, I'm sort of torn because, again, I've always, as I said at the start, I'd love it all to be independence. But I do get it. I do get what you're just saying. And I take, for example, the Broadmeadow precinct, which we'll talk about a little bit later, in regards to getting things over the line, because back in the day, Labor was still is a safe Labor seat. So back in the day, a lot of the federal government, state government would say, well, we don't need to give Newcastle anything because we're going to win that seat next time anyway. So what's the point of giving it? And then when the Liberals got in, it was like, well, we're not going to give it to a Labor-aligned city. So in a way, I can actually see the benefit of that.
Yeah. So I think there, as I said, there was a unique window in order for us to be able to demonstrate that we can continue to deliver for Newcastle and not have the bickering between levels of government, because we are on the same page. We have similar values. The electorate understands those values, and we're pushing in the same direction. I think that can only lead to good outcomes for Novocastrians. And without getting super partisan about it, I've served on council long enough and served with different groups of independents in the time that I'm on council. Almost without exception, independents do come with their own ideology and politics. I think that everybody sitting around the council chamber is political in one way or the other, and it's just about the degree of openness that they have about putting on a red shirt or a blue shirt or a green shirt, or saying that they're independent. I just think it's worth the electorate considering the values, because ultimately, you need to understand the person that you're electing and the way that they're likely to vote on a whole multitude of different issues that are going to come up to council over the course of the term.
Just staying on the political side of things. So, do you have political ambitions beyond the council in regards to down the track?
I'm putting my hand up for Lord Mayor. If I'm elected, I'm committed to sticking with that role for the long term. I would certainly, if I was elected at this election, I would certainly be seeking to contest the next election as the Labor candidate for Lord Mayor of Newcastle, and be seeking to deliver for the city over an extended period.
Sonia Hornery, the member for Wallsend, how do you get on with her?
Look, I think the Premier described our relationship pretty well by saying people in Newcastle have got sharp elbows in describing some of the...
I've heard you hate each other.
I don't think that that's a fair characterisation of our relationship. Sonia and I work professionally together. We are working together in terms of my candidacy for Lord Mayor. There are issues that we disagree on, but there is very many things that we agree on. Some of the things that we agree on are like rebalancing the council budget and making sure we see even more investment into our western suburbs, making sure we have great public facilities like great public pools, and that's why I'm investing in the way in the way that I am, and certainly making that a cornerstone of the campaign that I'm running as Labor's candidate for Lord Mayor. And she has been very supportive of me over this period.
There is the belief that you have been wanting the state seat of Wallsend for a while. Would you have the support of Sonia if she decides to go another term?
Well, I will be supporting Sonia to seek pre-selection to go another term.
I've been told that she's been holding on because she didn't want you to get the seat.
Look, I'm not going to speculate on that. We've not had a conversation along those lines. We've had a conversation historically to say that at some point when she is no longer the member for Wallsend, I had expressed interest in nominating for that role. Yep. Clearly, though, that circumstance has changed. There's now a vacancy in the office of Lord Mayor. I'm putting my hand up in order to run and serve the city in that capacity. I'm not looking at the seat of Wallsend, and I've got an awful lot of time for Sonia. She is a strong community advocate, somebody that speaks up very loudly on behalf of the people that she represents. But now door knocking in Wallsend today, and I've got to say, every door that I knock on when Labor is mentioned, people have a favourable story about how Sonia has worked to support them during the recent time. She's a hardworking member of our party.
I'm going to say something. I was going to say hypothetically, but it's actually something that could happen. And I've actually heard some whispers that Sonia isn't far from retiring. So hypothetical, you win the mayoral election, you become the mayor, and say 2 or 3 months later, Sonia decides to vacate or decides to, I'm not going to run the next election. What do you do? You just mentioned that you'd stay stay as Lord Mayor, and you can't do both these days.
Correct. The Get Clover laws made sure that was the case. My answer remains the same as the one that I gave you before. I'm putting my hand up to be the Lord Mayor of our city. The commitment that I'm making in running for that office is that if I'm elected, I will see through the term and I will also contest the next election. I think it is right that the city has a leader that is in it for the long run and that it does take time to deliver outcomes in local government. It is not something you can dip into and out of. I am absolutely committed to the office that I am nominated for at the moment, and I would love to be the city's Lord Mayor. And if I am elected to that role, I will serve that in that role.
You do have the branch numbers if she did decide to pull the pin.
As I said, I would support Sonia's nomination for pre-selection at the upcoming election. She and I are working closely together. She knows that I am nominated for the Lord Mayor of Newcastle and that I support her as our state member of parliament.
So I'll just ask one more time. If you win and become the mayor, Sonia decides to retire after this, you will not run for that state seat of Wallsend.
No, that I stand by the answer I gave you before.
Beautiful. Dr. Ross Kerridge, the former mayor, and terrible about his health problems, and we all wish him the very best. How did you get on with him?
I just want to acknowledge and respond in the same way of saying, of course, nobody, it must, I really feel for him and his family and what he must be going through in seeking the treatment that he's undertaking at the moment. For somebody in public office to choose to stand back in order to prioritise their health, I think reflects extremely positively on him, but it also highlights the seriousness of the circumstances that he's in. And so, of course, I want to make sure that I'm pleased that he's focusing on his health, and I wish him a speedy recovery and his family as well. Politically and personally, we had a complicated relationship. It's fair to say.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, put the health matters to the side. Do you think he did a good job in his tenure?
I don't think there was I suspect that history will show that he had a challenging time as Lord Mayor of our city. He didn't have a majority in the council chamber. He didn't have a pathway to a majority, or certainly didn't seek to negotiate one. I heard a press conference not long after his resignation where for the first time he said that in that press conference that he had made mistakes in his time as Lord Mayor. And I think one of the mistakes that he made was that he didn't seek to build relationships around the council chamber. An example of that is that he was elected in September of 2024. After he was elected, I reached out to him roughly every week, trying to arrange a time to sit down with him and have a face-to-face meeting in order to talk about things that we had in common, areas where we disagreed, how we might work together, in the knowledge at that time that we had 4 years to work together. It wasn't until the week before Christmas in 2024, so 4 months afterwards, that he finally agreed to meet with me in order to have that conversation. And whilst it was fairly cordial, the discussion, there wasn't agreement, there wasn't a request for anything for us to work on together. And I think that was to his detriment. There are many things
But do you think to his detriment was leaving the Labor Party wouldn't have helped?
In good faith, I had reached out to him and had sought to find things that we could work on in common. One thing that I had invested considerable time in trying to find to work on together with Ross was things about our city's international relations. It's an area of some interest to me and an area of great interest to Ross. And so I saw that as something that if he could see that I could support him on that, maybe he could see that we could have a relationship that was both combative at times in the council chamber as it needs to be, but also where there is a bunch of things that we could do together and that we could advance the cause of the city. Unfortunately, that we were scheduled to meet incidentally on the Tuesday after he resigned, and he resigned on the Monday, and so we didn't have the opportunity to further explore that discussion. But I raise it just as a demonstration as to the kind of person that I am, and also the way that I had been seeking to work with him, because it was important that the city progress, and that I knew that without him being able to find 7 votes in the council chamber, there weren't going to be very, very many issues that we were able to see significant progress on. And
that's the thing too. You're looking forward. You've got Gavin Morris challenging, and again, I know we got Charlotte McCabe and also Jenny Barry, but hypothetically, is Gavin Morris pushing shit up a hill if he becomes mayor, the same problems as what Ross Kerridge had?
My advice to Gavin, for what it's worth, is in the event that he is elected mayor, is that it is so important that he builds relationships around the council chamber and is able to find a path for his agenda to be supported and adopted by council. I make the commitment to him because, in the event that he is fortunate enough to be elected Lord Mayor, then I would be a councillor on that council. I would be seeking to find common ground and for us to work together on the issues that the people that vote for me care about, and I think that is positive overall for the city. But it is a challenge. The thing that I bring as a candidate in this election is that I have the relationships in the council chamber. I have not lost a vote at council during this term of council. I have been able to negotiate every item on our agenda by talking with the Labor councillors, talking with the Liberal councillors, talking with the Greens and talking with the Independents and finding common ground. And that includes on some things that were pretty contentious. Yeah. And so that takes skill, it takes a lot of listening, it takes a lot of time, but that is the kind of person that I am and the way that I conduct myself as a councillor.
Ross sort of threw a bit of a grenade on his resignation, didn't he, when he mentioned, if I'm dealing with children, I'd rather be dealing with my own grandchildren than those in other places. He also said that to the Newcastle Herald that the combative and disruptive behaviour of some councillors who were pushing their own political careers and agendas was a contributing factor to his decision to leave. Were you one of those people he's talking about?
I think just would reflect on Dr. Kerridge's quotes and just note that he made those comments on the Thursday before he announced an independent candidate running on the Friday. Like clearly that was part of some very neat messaging from Dr. Kerridge in order to back in the gentleman that the very next day he was going to announce to be his candidate. Like not for one second do I not think that there were conversations that had been happening for very many weeks and a very well orchestrated departure from council. And so I'm not going to respond directly to his comments other than no, I think they need to be viewed through the lens of that was the timing of that conversation. It's not coincidental, and I think it's important that's that's recognised.
$2 pool charges.
It's something I'm super passionate about.
I know. I think we look at this. Is that your screensaver at work now?
Oh, that's a good idea. It's not, but it may well be. Thank you to Jono at the Newcastle Herald. What a spectacular photo. I'm pretty pleased. I'm pretty proud of the initiative and pleased that he got it captured as succinctly as he did.
To be honest, I would rather you bring down the charges at the Summerland waste disposal facility, to be quite truthful, but we'll get on to that. But look, Bluefit Aquatics is the independent leisure facility management company. They manage all the pools. So I've got a question. So they manage the Lambton facility, Mayfield, Wallsend, Barrow, and also Stockton.
Yep.
So if this $2 trial comes in, and I know that's come into force with the other pools as well, Newcastle Council subsidises Bluefit Aquatics. So they get the difference. So it's still, they're still getting what it was going to be, what's around $6 or whatever it is to get in. So Newcastle Council subsidises Bluefit. What I'm trying to sort of say, it's like, are you robbing Peter to pay Paul? Because where's the money coming from to pay Bluefit?
Yep.
I mean, it's all great to say it's $2, but at the end of the day, Bluefit's still getting paid.
Yeah, yep.
To make people, they're not bringing their prices down because they've got a contract, obviously.
So can respond to that. So firstly, by saying there are lots of services that council subsidises, heaps. Black Butt we talked about before. visiting libraries, investing in our footpaths. We don't have a user pay system for every single service that the council operates. And the way that that's resolved is that we collect rates from property owners in the city, and we invest in those services. We have always subsidised pool entry. The cost of going to the pool is far more than $6. The subsidy previously was in the order of $7 every time somebody went for a swim at the pool that ratepayers were funding in addition to the cost of the entry fee. It's worth recognising that lots of the cost associated with operating a swimming pool is a fixed cost. It costs so much to have that much water in the pool, to undertake the cleaning, to manage the depreciation costs. They're all fixed. There are some variable costs, the amount of staff, the amount of chemicals that you need to put in, but largely fixed. If you increase the number of users that go to the pool, the cost per user declines. The total fixed cost is divided by a larger number of users. And so whilst, yes, the $2 pool initiative does require an additional subsidy from council, it is not the same as just the gap between the previous pool entry cost and $2. It is something slightly less than that as a result of the efficiency, the economy of scale that comes about as a result of more users using it. That's probably a degree of detail too much, but I say that just to make the point. I think access to community swimming facilities is really important. Yep. Making them as accessible as possible for our community is important. Absolutely. $2 is a good way that we can do that. We've had the trial now underway for this summer, the first swimming season. That was a motion I took to council. It was opposed by some councillors, but I was able to get it negotiated in order for it to be implemented this summer. We've seen attendance at the 4 pools that are as part of the trial increase between 40 and 50% each, and that's happened without any impact on the number of swimmers that are going to Lambton Pool. We've been connecting the details of the people that are coming to the pool, and we're seeing people that wouldn't ordinarily swim. So it's not just the regular lap swimmers coming an extra session a week. We're seeing kids and families come and visit that haven't previously been to the pool, and I think that's a really good thing.
I mean, just staying on that too. I mean, Gavin Morris, he's sort of, he's come back and more or less, agreed with what you're saying, but also wanted to go one step further by having pools open longer throughout the year. Again, is that the same sort of policy in regards to subsidising Bluefit because at the end of the day, Bluefit is going to say, well, now we've got to hire more staff, to do that through that. This wasn't in the plan at the start when we signed the deal.
And all of that's fair. And the detail of that needs to be negotiated. I have been committed to seeing a year-round facility for a swimming facility in Newcastle since I was first elected to council. We have plans to build an indoor facility at Lambton Pool. We've been undertaking community consultation around what that might look like. There's very promising conversations underway presently with Royal Lifesaving and the New South Wales government about a potential model for what that might look like. That means that swimmers will be able to access a facility during the winter season, and it also means that we'll be able to operate somewhere as a dedicated learn to swim facility, because one of the issues that you have is that kids that want to learn to swim have to have slightly warmer water than what is comfortable for somebody doing lap swimmers, and there's not a happy medium if they're all in the same pool. So having a dedicated pool that would work year-round for swimming lessons also provides a year-round facility for council. Yep. There's been a community petition more recently looking at requesting us to consider operating one of the existing pools year-round. That came up about 2 years ago for Lambton Pool. Lambton Pool isn't suitable for a year-round facility because one of the quirks of that facility is that all of the pools, there's a 25-metre pool, the 50-metre Olympic pool and the diving pool, they're all interconnected. And so it's not possible to heat one of the bodies of water in the absence of the others. And so it just means it's extraordinarily expensive. The most recent community campaign has requested us to consider operating Mayfield Pool year-round. I think whether it's Mayfield or one of the other smaller swimming centres, I'm open to discussing that. Let's find out how much demand there is for us to do that, how much it might cost. So I'm not committing absolutely that we would do it, but I'm certainly committing that we would work through and see whether we can make it work, because I think the concept of it is something I really support. I just think I would prefer that we see the detail of it before I commit fully.
I'd like to also, if you could bring back the Chico roll at the Lambton Pool. Well, I know what happened to them. Yeah. But they're gone.
That is to the...
Even David loves his Chico roll.
Fair enough. That is...
you need to speak to Bluefit about this.
Yeah. Well, and so when I've been talking about $2 pools, one of the things that parents in particular...
Shut up, David.
Parents in particular say to me is that by the time it costs $6 to go to the pool, and then every kid wants to go on the slide, and then they want to have some hot food, there's $50 that's kind of evaporated in the course of an afternoon out, reducing the cost cost to $2 is a good way of helping make that a little bit more affordable.
You know what I love about the front of the Lambton Pool is the rose garden that's out the front. That was there when I was like this high. It is the most sturdy, hardy garden going. At Elk Architecture, we don't just design buildings, we shape the spaces where life happens. From concept to construction, our award-winning architects bring our vision to life with precision, passion, and purpose. Whether it's your dream home or your next big commercial project, trust Elk Architecture to build what matters most. Elk Architecture, designed for life, built for the future. From one, bit of water to another, rising tide. The new mayoral candidate, Jenny Barry, she mentioned yesterday, she came out and said that she doesn't believe in what it stands for, and that the Independents, Labor and Greens have encouraged civil disobedience for their support of Rising Tide. What's your take on that?
So I didn't vote on Rising Tide last year, and I'll take a moment to explain why. I had a conflict of interest with respect to Rising Tide. One of the activists that was involved in Rising Tide worked professionally with me in my day job. Because of the way that Rising Tide is assembled, she was actually the lead plaintiff in the legal action that Rising Tide took against the New South Wales government. And just given the code of conduct that applies for councillors, it was inappropriate for me to participate in that decision. That conflict, though, is largely resolved because that individual is now no longer involved with Rising Tide. I understand that they're just no longer they're no longer participating in that, which means that I do have the ability now to voice an opinion where I didn't previously on Rising Tide.
So what's your opinion now?
So I'm a Labor councillor. I recognise the value that has come from the Labor movement, and I fundamentally believe in the right to protest. But I don't believe that anybody has the right to break the law. I don't believe that people have the right to cause economic disruption to business, tourism operators. And most importantly, I don't believe that anyone has the right to put not only themselves but others' safety at risk.
Well, I was going to say, it's going to take someone to get killed in that harbour for things to happen, because it could quite happen. Someone could drown. And again, all the other stuff that's the things that the commitments that they've broken, like making flotation devices, pegging, causing damage to the irrigation systems, damage to the vegetation, including mature trees. I'm sure some of these guys would have been hanging out of the Layman Street fig trees a few years ago, but it's a different story now. Faulty waste management facilities, open fires, non-qualified site security. The list goes on. Absolute nonsense.
So I agree with you. So I don't support the elements of their protest activity that are illegal. I think that it is appropriate that there is stern action that's taken. I am concerned by the fact that Rising Tide has become a very significant distraction of resources for the police. And then at a broader level, I also think it undermines the broader transition that is underway in our region. The Port of Newcastle is one of our nation's most significant assets when it comes to transition. They're working as hard as they can to change from being a coal port to being something that is more diversified. The work around the renewable energy precinct at the Port of Newcastle, for example, will be the single largest renewable energy precinct at any port anywhere in the world. The amount of wind turbines that they're going to be bringing in through that facility. The cruise industry is another example of that, where we're calling out for more tourism in the Hunter as we continue to go through this structural diversification. I'm concerned that some of the actions of Rising Tide and the way that they seek to create change undermines the very transition that notionally they should be supporting. And so I make that point. They'll make that point as well.
I think it also makes the average person just angry. It's almost like, we've got rules and regulations we've got to adhere to, and then you're just seeing blatantly, you always know there's going to be a few idiots that it's going to cause trouble. But I mean, they paddle out there, in their kayaks. Made, from fossil fuel based materials. 95% of them plastic and manufactured from plastic, derived from oil. Nearly everything's in oil these days, let's face it.
I think we're all letting that at the moment.
Absolutely. But that's the thing too. I mean, you've said that you want things fixed in regards to tightening it up. You're not saying you don't want to try and get rid of it.
So So the other point I think that it's worth making, and sorry, just to go back to the broader macro point as well, I believe in climate change. I got involved in part in local government because I can see that council has a role in order to address some of the issues that we see with climate change. In Newcastle, that isn't just in terms of the emissions that come from the city, but it's also dealing with the impacts of climate change. Things like the erosion crisis that we are experiencing, all of the low-lying lands that exist around the city. People are seeing that in their insurance premiums, the need for us to take action. The action that I see though, and it goes to the starting of this interview, I'm somebody that is eager to solve problems and create change, and I can see that there's a way to solve problems and create change through local government. It's why I pushed for the city to become 100% renewable in the way that with the energy that we use for everything from the barbecues at our parks right through to street lights is all powered by renewable energy. I pushed for the 5 megawatt solar farm that we have at Summerhill Waste Management Centre. That is how I would like to see change created, and I can speak to the benefits that we've seen as a community. I support the right to protest, but I don't support protest that causes harm as the method of creating change. In fact, I actually think it undermines the change that we're seeking to create in the city.
Do you obviously agree with closing down coal power power stations? But do you feel that it's not time yet? I'm not saying that fix the world, but we're doing it way too quickly, and it's causing, I think personally, people are suffering. It's hard enough to live what it is these days, but everything's recyclable, and I totally get that. But it's to the point where it's actually starting to cut in on the average person's wage bill in regards to things. We've got garbage trucks. We've got how many more garbage trucks on the road picking up other different bits of waste to save the planet?
Yep.
Into the inbox, I mean, these are. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm just saying that I think there's sometimes it's like it's forced upon people to go, oh, we're doing this. It makes us feel good rather than getting the result done.
I'm all for substantive action that is genuine and delivers actual meaningful outcomes for the environment, and that's certainly the way that I act. I'm not interested in the virtual signalling kind of stunts, but in the genuine action that creates change. I agree with you. So just quickly on the coal-fired power station and the region in general, coal continues to support thousands of jobs across our region. I agree that we need to transition away from coal, but that absolutely has to be done in a meaningful and managed way that allows people to transition into other high-paying, high-quality jobs. It is completely unacceptable for somebody to say that we're going to shut down all coal in 2026 or 2028 or 2030. That is just nonsense. It is not achievable. And if it was, it would see mass unemployment across our region. That is not a sustainable transition or a good outcome for Newcastle or the Hunter. And so I am extremely pragmatic about this. I recognise the urgency of addressing climate change, but I also recognise that we need to make sure that we bring people with us and that we are creating good alternatives. So I'm a big fan of advanced manufacturing. I support the defence industry across our region. I want Newcastle to be the northern powerhouse of New South Wales, to continue to have amazing high-quality jobs in manufacturing and traditional blue-collar industries. I just want them to be powered by renewable energy. That's the direction that I'd like to see our region take.
Just tell us about your upbringing.
Yep.
You grew up in Wallsend?
I did. So I lived across Newcastle, but most of the time growing up, Mum and Dad had a place in Wallsend, and I grew up there. Went to primary school first at Elmore Vale and then at New Lambton. I went to Lambton High. I was the captain at Lambton High School. I was pretty interested in the environment and sustainability when I was at high school. Just yesterday, I was down at the Lambton Carai Creek through Lambton Park, where we've just established a new land care group. I've been involved in that creek for 20 years, it turns out, because I was the captain of the Water Watch team that met down there once a month, testing the water quality.
Damn, I wish we got some pictures of that.
This is incredible. Ready to go.
No, we haven't. We haven't.
We're good. We're not that good.
Yeah, I can say, look, I'm happy to share some. My team were going to do a flashback, but I had that.
David's ears pricked up. Went, what? Hang on, you haven't seen any of them.
Yeah. So that was Lambton High School. It involved in the creek. Anyway, I was telling that story partly because it was one of the things that the reasons I ran for council initially was I was elected in 2015 after a series of by-elections following Macloy's resignation. One of the things that his council led was quite conservative, was he scrapped the environment programs that council had operated up into that time. And when I was in high school, I was involved in the environment programs that council operated.
At Wallsend High?
I was at Lambton High,
Lambton.
And felt super aggrieved by those cuts. And that was the thing that sparked my interest in local government and why I decided to get involved. So when I was elected to council in 2015, I championed the naturalisation of the Lambton Carrai Creek through Lambton Park, and then it looks phenomenal. And I was back down there yesterday with the new land care group that's just set up.
I reckon you were a prefect.
I was captain.
Even better. And also probably the captain of the debating team as well.
We didn't have a debating team, but I reckon I would have gone all right had we had one.
There was talk that Newcastle was going to run again. You've worked with her well in the past. Just you had a great working relationship with her, didn't you?
I learned a lot from Newcastle. She was a really hardworking Lord Mayor for our city, and somebody that initiated quite a lot of change. I don't think anyone could say that the time that she was Lord Mayor, almost a decade, was a quiet period for the city. We saw stuff getting done for the first time in a long time, and I was pretty proud to be able to work alongside her and to deliver change for the city.
She actually hated me.
Why's that?
Because I did some stories on her on the council, and I can't even remember what they were, but I asked her some hard questions and she couldn't answer them, and she absolutely the daggers every time she used to see me. But the thing is, I mean, even Gladys Berejiklian hated me because I asked her. I think remember she was the minister for the Hunter for a while, and I think it was on Maitland train station. I asked Gladys, what's the postcode to Newcastle? And she actually went, I don't know.
2300.
Like, Michael Caine, NBN News. And she's just from that point on just is giving me a colour.
Look, but maybe it's a sign of wear it as a badge of honour. Like surely that's credibility as a journo. You're here to ask the tough questions,
but I
to
will
take
say,
no prisoners.
Newcastle did get me back in the end. Now, I was in an event which I raised, I think it was nearly $32,000 for motor neuron disease, MND, where I had to slide down a slide into some ice. It was the ice challenge. And there I was. And look at Newcastle kicking me. Is there a close-up of that? Look at that. Look at the delight.
I hope that there was some extra fundraising that happened as a result of that. Not only I have good memories of this event as well, because the very next year, Newcastle wasn't available, and so as her deputy, I got to do the slide into the ice bucket challenge for MND.
I can tell you that is her screensaver wherever she's working now. The Newcastle Post Office been a massive talking point forever and a day. At the moment, there's a $1 million in public heritage funding for the project. That could be lost. Is that correct? The deadline looms for the development consent to lapse. I think it's in April. No extensions?
No, there isn't an automatic pathway. So the Newcastle Post Office, obviously an extremely well-regarded heritage building in our city. It was privatised in 2002. It's had a few different owners. Dr. Schwartz owns it presently. In 2021, a DA was approved for it to be restored, and there was a promise that Dr. Schwartz made around bringing it back to its former state, I think he was planning to have is planning to have a function centre, some form of Indigenous business space, and then a room for a replica model of Newcastle to be displayed. DAs have a 5-year statutory life, and so this DA lapses on the 8th of April. In order for the DA not to lapse, substantive works have to have commenced in order to demonstrate that the DA has been activated. That requires him to have a construction certificate and also requires him to have a certificate from Heritage New South Wales. Presently, neither of those approvals are in place, but since I've raised this publicly over the course of the last few weeks, there's been, I have to say, I'm an internal optimist. There has been some positive signs, including engagement with Heritage New South Wales and Heritage New South Wales saying that they are going to expedite their assessment of the application to try and give it the very best shot that they can of getting it approved.
Yeah, I think and he said he was going to spend $3.6 million on it. 3.6 million, geez, it's a lot of work involved in there. I've been on jobs on suburban homes that cost 1 million. I've seen some of the insides of that place, and I think we got some pictures on, like, and when I was working for NBN, we did some stories, and as you go further down, there's this pool of water. You're trying to light down, and what's that? They said that's just the water. Like we can't get that out. There's always going to be rising damp. I don't know who anyone would take that on. I don't know. You know, you could throw that much money in it. I don't know how it could be fixed. Jerry's also, I think he was putting a bit of pressure on his own architects a couple of weeks ago in regards to getting these things approved.
There's no doubt it's a tough project.
What's your thoughts on Jerry Schwartz?
So I've not met him personally. I've only had interactions with him through council. I take at face value his commitment to Newcastle and to seeing this project through. Note that there has been some significant carrots put on the table in order to try and incentivise an outcome, including $1 million in public funding in order to support the heritage restoration of this building. That funding, though, lapses when the DA lapses. And so, again, it's really important that we see some action being taken in line with the DA, because the consequence, if it's not taken, is that we're back at square one, where then a new DA has to commence. It have to go through the contemporary standards. It just pushes any project back years. That's a really, really poor outcome for this building. I was pretty alarmed. I think about a fortnight ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, both council staff and officers from Heritage New South Wales went through the building. The reports back from that meeting weren't real positive in terms of their concern. They were saying that there are active leaks in the ceiling that have not been addressed. I saw some of the photos, I think it might have been in the Herald or possibly on NBN, of the plaster deteriorating. Clearly urgent action is necessary. And so I raised this issue because we're at the 11th hour in terms of the DA. The clock has been running for 5 years, and we're now down to the last few weeks before that DA lapses. And only just now are we starting to see some positive signs that there might be enough progress in order to keep this project alive.
I mean, I know that it's been vacant for so long, which is how it's fallen into disrepair even more and more. The New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council made a claim on the site, which was successful in 2015 under the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Rights Act 1983. They sold it to Jerry Schwartz in 2019 for $3.5 million. At the point of the sale, the Land Council Administrator Terry Lawler said it's a tremendous result for the Awabakal Land Council. Of course, it bloody was. They got it for nothing and then sold it. But do you feel that in that time they sat on it? I mean, they're a little bit culpable as well, where they did nothing in their time that they had it.
I think, this building was sold in 2002 and it's been vacant largely since 2002. Awabakal had the site for a couple of years over that time frame, but we're talking about the best part of 30 years that it's sat vacant under a variety of owners. Dr. Schwartz was very well aware of the condition of the building when he bought it, and he made commitments very publicly to Newcastle about what he intended to do with that site. He made commitments to council in terms of the DA that he put forward that has been approved. I'd really like to see progress made on those commitments.
Do you put faith in him to get this done?
So as I said, I don't know him personally. I only know him by reputation. As a man by reputation, he appears to have been quite successful in business and in the other hotel ventures that he operates. Hopefully, some of those smarts translate into this building, and we see some progress.
But he seems like someone who, when he doesn't get his way, he throws the toys out of the cot. I mean, look at the carousel on the foreshore. Maybe if you just got that over the line, everything would be fine.
I don't know if that's a great outcome for Newcastle. That's the issue, and also not entirely how these things work. So,
but the funny thing about it, I worked for SBS. I think it was about 2008, and Les Murray, the well-known soccer commentator and legend of SBS Sport, called me into the office and he said, "Michael, you're from Newcastle," and I said, "Yeah, I am." He says, "Tell me about the post office," and I'm like, "What?" "Well, what do you need to know about the post office in Newcastle?" "Yes, the old." "Yeah, I know what it is." I said, "What do you need to know this for, Les?" He says, "Because I'm thinking about buying it with a consortium." I'm thinking. I said, "What are you going to turn it into? A wine bar?" And I said, "What are you going to call it?" He goes, "I don't know." And I said, "What about this? The post office." Anyway, what a great idea!
Fabulous.
Wouldn't it be great if Les bought it?
It's good that there might be some other warm options.
But look, I've got to say, I love what's happening in the top of Newcastle all the way through the old mall. I love the fact that they're showcasing the old buildings for what they were, and if they're not, they're sort of turning it back into the way that the architecture, which I think's sadly lost in a lot of buildings these days. And you look even down the main street of Newcastle, you see tops of buildings where you sort of look and go, "Oh, that was built in the 1930s." I don't think we could do that anymore. But do you feel that that's just the transformation, the top of town? It's been the most impressive thing, I think.
It's extraordinarily impressive, and it's not to say that there's nothing that's contentious that's going on at the moment. But when I was first elected to council, this was an item of very significant contention because it was not long after the GPT group had proposal. They purchased them all. That had allowed a very excessive building heights. It was strongly opposed by the Newcastle Inner City Residents Group, amongst others. I was part of the team that negotiated back down the building heights to be consistent with the Newcastle Urban Renewal Strategy, that then ultimately worked with the New South Wales Government, Urban Growth, and then Iris when they were successful in terms of their development. I know that not everyone will agree with this, but it's worth acknowledging that Iris Capital have now invested more than $1 billion into their development in the mall. The inner city part of Newcastle is a really challenging space to keep activated. Its heyday was when we had an enormous hospital on the peninsula, and it was the main shopping strip of Newcastle.
I mean, the Hunter Street. I mean, you look at it. I mean, the different way of shopping these days. I mean, shopping centres, Westfields, all that sort of stuff.
Well, even they're struggling now as things are starting to move more and more online. Like we're seeing the next phase of that shift as well.
Totally, but that old way of park the car down one end of Hunter Street and walk all the way up on a Thursday night.
Yes,
just outdated with the dodo. But again, I think the challenge that I saw over the years with council, especially, is that a lot of these buildings were owned by investors from Sydney. You can't just take over a building. You've got to wait for that investor to do something. Most of them were just doing it purely to sit on it to make money. But it's taken a while, but you can just start to see it. Midtown, for example, an important cog in all this, especially about just I suppose getting the music, I suppose that vibe, that corridor there is probably the perfect spot. The fact that there isn't probably as much high rise around that area, isn't it?
I agree. And so, in connecting those two ideas together, so Newcastle, the CBD of Newcastle previously was all about retail. That's how it worked. Retail in the hospital moved out, and it's had over a series of decades a pretty significant decline. We're seeing that turn around as a result of projects that have enabled residential density in that part of the city. When previously they were commercial districts that didn't really have a large residential population, the new changes have facilitated more residents to move into those parts of Newcastle. And that is important because Newcastle sits on the end of a peninsula. There's no other reason to go into town unless you live there. We're creating an economy and diversity, vibrancy as a result of having people situated there because we've got people living there. But in doing that, we've got to manage some of the other negative consequences that come as a result of moving new people into areas. One of them is that often people move in loving the idea of living in the city, but then being concerned that it turns out that they live next door to a live music venue, and they put in complaints, they petition their councillors, they complain to state agencies, and the live music venue really struggles, and there's plenty of documented examples where ultimately that leads to their closure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to address that with the special entertainment precinct, the idea being that we can set some clear rules and boundaries in a section of the city and say this part of the city with these venues is somewhere that we want to encourage live music to occur. We want to have a fun place for young people to go and hang out after dark. We want to make sure that there's diversity and interesting wine bars and places for people to grab a cocktail after 10 o'clock. But the consequence of that is that new people moving into that precinct need to be aware that those are the rules and that they have to coexist and live alongside those venues. And the special entertainment precinct, the SEP model, is one that attempts to bridge that divide.
And I think it's important. Live music, I mean, back in the day, you go into any pub on a Friday or Saturday night, there was someone playing. Now you're struggling to find anyone. Even if the guy's crap, you're sitting there listening to it, at least it's live.
Yeah.
But that's an important thing. And I wanted what you mentioned at that announcement the other day. You said inner city Newcastle, you shouldn't be going to bed with Big Dog. When was the last time you went to bed with Big Dog?
It's been a little while, I've got to say, since I went to bed with Big Dog. But you should see my email inbox. I get emails from some residents in the inner city parts of Newcastle, particularly people that are moving into new development. And I'm not going to name any names, but example, I get complaints from people that live on Wharf Road complaining about the noise that ships make. They've chosen to live immediately on a working harbour and are complaining about the ships. It is not uncommon. And so I just want to make the point that we want Newcastle to be a vibrant, interesting, diverse city. And that means that there might be some inconvenience. And it's the way that we work together as a community to manage those. For the special entertainment precinct, it means if there's a new residential development that gets built, it's got to put in double glazed windows. It has to have additional installation, and the new residents have to be aware that they're moving next door to somewhere that has live music, just to give it the very best chance of success.
I can tell you that there was a former media man, I'm not going to mention his name, moved into one of those apartments above, at Honeysuckle with the restaurants underneath, complained to the police nearly every Sunday, to the point where they just got sick of it. So he went out on the balcony every Sunday with a hose and hosed down his balcony. But again, when you're buying that there was obviously going to be restaurants down and cafes down the bottom. He knew what he was in for.
Yeah. We've just got to make that as apparent as possible and make sure the rules are also fair. And so that's what a special entertainment precinct does. I know that there'll be concern from some parts of Newcastle thinking this is going to be a sweeping change that's going to cover the whole city. I've been really clear too about my support for the Midtown precinct, where there are well-organised businesses, and also there is some residential in that precinct, but it's relatively small compared to the rest of the inner city parts of Newcastle. It's self-contained within a block. Let's give it a go. Make sure the planning rules work in this precinct. I think that would be the best way for us to progress it.
Supercars. No more hot laps for councillors?
No more councillor hot laps.
Did you have a hot lap?
I did not.
There's a few that did. They used to love putting it on social media, but there's no doubt that brings a focus to the area. I know you mentioned the other night at council that you do support it. Look at that beautiful shot of that, but not in our own backyard.
So
it's like when you're living in the street and there's a development DA going in and so there's going to be a set of housing commission units down the end. It's like, you know what, we want affordable housing, but can you just do it in the next suburb?
Look, I don't know that it's exactly the same as that.
I know, I'm stretching it there.
What I would say is that supercars did bring positive things to the city. It did drive economic activity. It was a good thing for Newcastle, but Newcastle has changed since that event was here. I made the comment the other night, and I stand by it, that there is a direct line between the supercars event in 2017 and the amazing acts that we've been getting at McDonald Jones Stadium. I've had direct conversations with Venues New South Wales and promoters that have said, in part as a result of the supercars event, they've been able to attract promoters that are interested in bringing acts to the city that we've not had before. Since supercars, we've had 2 5-star hotels open in Newcastle, a handful of other new hotels as well. We've seen new accommodation open up because we're now a city that is seen to be able to cater for events. Despite saying that, supercars did have a detrimental impact, particularly on people that live in Newcastle East.
Totally.
The last year of the event, the bump in and bump out in particular was dreadful. It extended way too long and caused a prolonged period of hardship. Conversations with the business chamber, they were concerned about the fact that supercars didn't necessarily make use of local businesses as much as they
that's
could.
The thing. It's just like
they would have been the good neighbour that we would have wanted to welcome back to the city.
It's just like a local show. They turn up, they're selling their own Pluto pups, their own hot dogs, all that sort of stuff, and the local business wasn't getting that and virtually closing down for weeks in regards to it wasn't even worth opening because of this circus that was going on. I do get the whole tourism thing. I mean, when I was at Channel 10, people were coming in to me going, wow, we never really saw Newcastle like this. The overhead shots of the choppers, all that sort of stuff. It was like Monaco, and that's what the supercars want. I don't know whether they'll actually want to go anywhere else. But sometimes I don't think the supercars are as in the financial position as what they once were. I reckon they'll take wherever they can get, whether it's the Cessnock 500 or whatever it is, the Hunter Valley thing, or somewhere else. I think they'll probably take it because, again, they're cooking the golden goose in regards to having 2 Bathursts each year because that's the only race that makes money. The other one, funny for them, was Newcastle.
Yep. So I'm open to other ideas in the region. The motion I took to council the other night ended up being supported unanimously, which was around supporting, making sure there was an event for the people that love the high octane motors racing events in Newcastle. 3 options that have come up. The Wine Country 500, which has had the backing of Cessnock Council, is something they're eager to pursue. There's been conversations at Circuit Italia in Port Stephens about whether there's some form of event could run there. And I understand there's conversations
that would actually look good.
on the Central Coast as well.
You would probably have to, the whole place would be, you would not be able to get in or out of that joint if they did something
I think there's got to be there would have to be more investment in order to make it happen. But I think the idea is worth exploring. And so that's what I've put on the table to say, I don't think Newcastle East is the right spot if we're going to bring the event back. But that's not to say there might not be in a location elsewhere in the region that could work. And perhaps where the experience of Newcastle could inform some of the lessons that would be learned in the way that a future event would roll out as well.
Maybe aim lower. Let's bring the hill climb back at the King Edward Park, I reckon.
I think that would be spectacular. I think that, unfortunately, that cliff face is a little bit worrying. We've had a few issues over the last little while.
Dave's laughing because I've brought this up many times on this podcast.
He's trying to make it happen. one guest at a time.
Any chance to get some vision of those things going around? It was ridiculous. In regards to sport, and again, obviously supercars is a sport. Big events that attract big events. Obviously, McDonald Jones Stadium. You've got Elton John, Paul McCartney, Pink, Foo Fighters, all that sort of stuff coming to town. I suppose sometimes, a loss of the supercars could be a win in other directions, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, I want to say major events. So all of those events at the stadium have been co-sponsored, supported by council and Venues New South Wales working together. Guns N' Roses and Foo Fighters coming up later this year have been extraordinarily successful. I want to see that calendar continue to get filled out and for there to be more options for great entertainment at the stadium as well.
I think it's a little bit sad, the Newcastle number 1 sports ground. I know we used to have some great sport played there, Sheffield Shield cricket. The Swans used to play trial games up here. The facilities just aren't up to scratch. Great surface. It's a beautiful boutique looking thing, but I just wish that it could get up to speed in regards to that. And I know it costs a lot of money. I got a story, and I won't mention who told me this, but this is before your time on council, when there was always trouble getting money for that facility. This fellow worked for a few different sporting organisations in the past, and he was sort of doing stuff, not behind council's back, but he was doing stuff to get some progress in regards to getting the number 1 sports ground up to speed. And by doing that, you need to get grants. Well, for a start, you need money to get grants sometimes. So he was going to some sports saying, "Can you kick the tin?" The sport would say yes. Go on to another sport, kick the tin. He more or less came back to council and said, "Look, I've done the groundwork here. All you got to do is apply for some grants from state government grants. If you get them, it may apply for federal government grants." It was almost like you could see this pyramid happening, and he got knocked back. And he feels like it was purely because it was him that did it and not someone from council, because it's something that council probably should have done in the first place.
Look, so I don't know the exact.
I'm not saying that you should have to answer that.
But I was on council at the time. What I would say in response, so I don't mean this to be an overly political point, but I think it's worth noting. We have had a decade where we've had conservative governments, state and federally. Both those conservative governments had sport rorts scandals where money was taken away from red electorates and there was their colour-coded spreadsheets of electorates and given to blue electorates. Newcastle was systematically excluded from being able to access funding in those programs for more than a decade. And it wasn't a small amount of money. We commissioned some research the Hunter Research Foundation Centre published from the university a few years ago that showed that we were excluded from more than $3 billion worth of grant programs, where if our city was awarded access to funding only on a per capita basis, so we'd still have to go through a merit-based process, the city would have been $100 million better off a year. The consequence of that, a decade where we've not been able to access those kind of funds, means that our facilities have been playing catch up, and we've needed to play catch up on a ratepayer base rather than being able to access serious leaks of state and federal money. And that has meant that there are real challenges in terms of the sporting infrastructure that we've got across the city.
Because you've got a great facility like the number 2 sports grounds, playing some great, big games there, rugby, women's W League, all that sort of stuff. That's got bones to really build into a nice boutique stadium. Again, it's probably, we're close to the city. I don't know whether that would work in regards to roads, all that sort of stuff, but it's almost sitting there going, you put a grandstand on the other side, like a little amphitheatre, all that sort of thing. And it would actually help. I mean, in regards to, the Jets don't obviously own Energy Australia. I mean, it's New South Wales venues. So again, they've got to compete with the surface when it gets rolled up and thrown out when there's a concert there, and then they've got to compete with trying to pass a ball from where it's bumpy and all that sort of stuff. So to have something that's 100% sporting facility, I think that's a no-brainer. That can you see something in the future down the track in regards to
absolutely, and I would continue to advocate in that space. We had earlier in the week the City of Newcastle's annual sports forum. It's the 5th time we've held that event. That's where we bring together executives from every code and every club in the city. Council has 145 sporting facilities across the city. There's just the local community ones all the way up to our regional and district scale facilities. Every single one of them requires additional investment. The challenge for us at the moment is where to invest the limited funds that we've got in terms of outcomes for sport. The things that's been raised with me the most are things like improving playing surfaces, so making sure that at a community scale we're investing in irrigation and in drainage. And that's particularly after the last 2 years where we've had the incredible wet periods where clubs haven't been able to play for weeks and weeks and weeks because of the prolonged wet weather and the fact that fields just weren't draining. At the same time, we've got almost every code of sport in the city is growing, and that's fantastic. It's great to see more people participating in sport. That's good. That's good. It's good in and of itself. It's great for community. It's good for healthy lifestyle. It's a really important thing. But we're seeing growth as a result of seeing players from a variety of different backgrounds, and most especially women starting to play sport more and more. That is so awesome, but it means that we are playing catch up as well in making sure that we have good facilities for female teams, because many of our change facilities, for example, are inappropriate, they're outdated, and they need investment. We are trying to stretch the council sports budget and invest in these things so that we are supporting community support as well as supporting the more elite sport through the variety of facilities. The elite sport facilities really work when we're able to get partnership between clubs, especially when it comes to fundraising and state and federal government. And so some great examples I've been involved with are, for example, the Hamilton Hawks upgrade at Passmore Oval. That is a fantastic facility delivered with local fundraising, with partnership between the Hawks and cricket, which has been terrific, with investment from other levels of government and then support from council. That is a model that's worked well for Olympic as well. I would like to see that continue to be replicated around the city. And the way that we're managing that is that we have a strategic sports plan. It's a 10-year document. It was set in 2021. It turns out we've been pretty successful at ticking off the actions. We're only 5 years into the 10-year plan, and we've decided that we need to revise it because we've achieved the vast majority of the actions, and it's ready for us to progress to the next 10-year plan. Consultation for that is just beginning now, and so we've had the sports forum that we've just had, bringing together clubs executives, bringing together all of the codes, is the way that we're starting to plan out and making sure that we are investing in those right things so that sport can continue to grow and flourish across the city. So I agree with you, and it's just going to be a matter of how it is that we're able to get all of the parties together, seek the agreement and the funding in order to be able to move ahead. But I think that we've got to invest both at a grassroots level and making sure we've got good suburban playing facilities, good female change rooms. We're investing in drainage and those style of issues, whilst also making sure we've got good elite facilities too for those professional teams.
What sport did you play, Declan?
I am not particularly sporty. So I was involved in athletics growing up, and swimming and orienteering. I did those kind of activities.
The next thing we're talking about is the art gallery. I feel like this one's more down yours.
All right, it's more down my. So fortunately, though, on the sports, I'm very lucky to have Peter Winnie Bartz as one of my colleagues on council, somebody that lives and breathes sport, and I value her expertise in this area greatly, and she's taught me a great deal over the time.
Tired of missing out on the best properties? Stop searching, start winning. At Optimum Buyers Agency, we work for you, not the seller. We negotiate harder, we move faster, we find the homes others don't. Off-market deals, smart strategy, real results. Whether it's your first home or your forever home, we make it happen. Optimum Buyers Agency, your edge in a competitive market. The art gallery. One thing that Newcastle does is putting energy into this, but this was a long time coming. It would have been around the time when you entered council. There was an absolute bun fight, wasn't there? There was money handed back, but $48 million, 20 years in the making, largest art gallery in New South Wales outside of Sydney.
It's an incredible space. Anyone that hasn't visited, I would strongly encourage to go and have a look. We had the opening night fairly recently, and 18,500 Novocastrians turned out on a rainy Friday night in order to attend the opening. It was pretty special. I have been a supporter of the art gallery right from the get-go, including at times, as you say, that it didn't have all that many friends. When I was elected to council, it was just after $7 million had been handed back to the federal government. That meant that $7 million got handed back to the state government as well, and we were left with nothing. I have served since 2021 as a director of the Newcastle Art Gallery Foundation, and I've got to say that foundation do extraordinary work. They raised $13 million in philanthropic donations to go towards the upgrade, and it was because of their extraordinary fundraising that they were able. It was a catalyst to get government back to the table in order to see the upgrade delivered. The art gallery collection that this city has, I don't think is something we can talk about enough. It's worth $150 million. It's the single greatest asset the city has.
I went. I did a story for NBN years ago, maybe 2013, when all this drama with the money was going on, and they opened up. It was like a big vault. It was like you see the old-fashioned banks. It was like, and open it up, I walked in. I'm sort of walking around. I thought, God, and I'm going, is this Brett Whiteley? They went, yeah. I went, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 15 Brett Whiteleys.
Yeah, all in the
Why
dungeon.
don't you just sell them all, and all your money troubles are gone? No, that's an investment,
Yeah.
But again, it's now you've got an area, such a massive area where you can actually hang some Brett Whiteleys.
Which is incredible. So the statistic, and I hope that I quote this correctly, was that prior to the upgrade, we were only able to show 2% of the collection on the walls of the gallery at a time. We now have a gallery that's big enough that we can put people's favourites and the most iconic spots, items of the collection on permanent display. And the most exciting thing about the upgrade, and it shows how much of an infrastructure nerd I am, is the loading dock and the lift that they've installed, because now we're able to take international exhibitions for the first time, because previously we didn't have a COVID loading dock. We couldn't safely take art off a truck and get it into the gallery. We've invested so that we've now got a fully covered, sealed, air-conditioned loading dock and lift so that precious bits of art can move into and out of that building completely protected.
You're the first person I know that's been so excited about a loading dock.
Yeah, well, it's a good outcome. It's exciting.
And I remember a few years ago, I think Barnaby Joyce came up. He was the acting Prime Minister at the time and announced some announcement. And you can mention this to your fellow councillor, Peter Winnie Barr. So I'm sure she went there purely to get a picture with Barnaby.
He well, look,
just putting it out there.
So politics. What I've learned in politics, and I appreciate the early comments about wearing a red shirt, I've made some great friends across different political parties. We were able to get $5 million from Barnaby Joyce and $5 million from John Barilaro, so the Deputy Premier and the Deputy Prime Minister at the time, both members of the National Party. We negotiated that as a Labor majority council. That was how we got the gallery funded, and that was as a result of the relationships that we had built with both of those gentlemen. So I've got.
Did you get a picture with Barnaby?
Well, I was there. I don't know that I went out of my way to get a one-on-one photo, but I'm definitely in the group shot with him.
Thank God for Google. The Broadmeadow precinct, that's set for a major urban redevelopment. Stuart Ayres, the head of the Urban Development Institute of Australia, New South Wales branch, believes it's the blueprint to potential other sites in New South Wales. It's almost like let's show how it can be done.
It is. I don't think Novocastrians understand just how significant Broadmeadow is. So the plans that we have progressed through council and the state government are for 20,000 new homes at Broadmeadow.
Yep.
That is the same as the town of Tamworth, the city of Tamworth, being delivered in the heart of our city. Like, it is really significant.
Years ago when I was growing up, no one even admitted to wanting to live in Broadmeadow.
Yes.
It was like Broadmeadow. You bought a house in Broadmeadow, like now, you know.
It's going to require significant public investment, especially to make it happen. So the state government's making really positive noises at the moment about moving the entertainment centre and putting that next to McDonald Jones. I fully support that. The entertainment centre in its current form was built as a quote unquote temporary facility in 1992. It's not fit for purpose. We don't see the acts that would come to the city come and visit that space. We don't have enough conferencing facilities in Newcastle. Having a purpose-built facility that meets the standards of a population of the size of Newcastle is going to be really important. But it will free up some land and will also be a serious down payment to demonstrate the government is serious about seeing Broadmeadow happen. And so I'd like to see that as one of the first things that move.
Did you hear Dave agree with you there?
I audibly agree.
Because he does a lot of free work. He films a lot of corporate events. So it's a shortage.
There's not enough conferencing. Anything above 150 people, you're pushing it. In Newcastle.
Which is to the detriment of the city, because conferences, so the economics of conferences are really interesting, but it brings visitors to the city during the week. So we can often fill hotels and restaurants on weekends. They're usually pretty busy times, but making sure there's enough traffic to keep restaurants and hotels, the hospitality industry viable during the week. Yeah. Conferences play a really important role in that. It also is a way that we bring people to the region that wouldn't otherwise be here. There's lots of research that shows that the people that we currently attract to Newcastle typically have relatives here. They're visiting family and friends. A conference is a good way. You get someone coming from somewhere else in Australia or internationally. They've never been to the region. They come here for 3 days for a conference and then they stay for the weekend. It's a really, really good outcome.
Even just, get away from the conference and facilities, but even having those big acts at McDonald Jones Stadium. I know some people that live in Sydney that couldn't get tickets to, I think it was Elton John, and came up here and stayed a few days purely because of the fact they couldn't get the tickets in Sydney. So it's a real viable option to not only come and watch an event, but also have a look around.
Completely agree.
So 15, was it council have called for a $15 million commitment to kickstart it with the state elections looming next year. That's the entertainment centre. I suppose with the airport expansion, it could be the real jewel in the crown of everything. And I know that the member for Swansea, Yasmin Catley, said that should be sort of practically be the everything built around it. It's almost like that needs to be done first. Not that it probably will, but it needs to be, that's it, and everyone gather around.
Totally. It's a demonstration of that government is taking it seriously, because I think there's a lot of people that are sitting back watching, not dissimilar to the people you described along Hunter Street for all those years, people that were land banking, happy to sit on the property that they owned, waiting for there to be a good time to invest and finally realise the return. I think there's a risk the same thing will happen in Broadmeadow, that everyone will sit around waiting for somebody else to act. Government has the opportunity to act and act early, both with investments like the entertainment centre, but also on the land that government owns, and be able to be a catalyst for the style of city that we want to build around Broadmeadow.
And I think there's plans also too to obviously extend the light rail down Tudor Street.
That's right.
And that would really connect everything up.
It would. So we've, as a council, one of the biggest wins that we've had in the most recent period, the work that I've been leading has been around zoning out the rail corridor so that we can see light rail delivered in future. If the corridor isn't preserved, light rail won't ever be extended. And so we now have that in planning law protected to make sure that there's a viable route for the extension of light rail. I want to see light rail extended to Broadmeadow. Eventually, I want to see it to the John Hunter. I want to see it out to the university and through Mayfield. Wall's End, 100%. I think
should have just left the trams.
Having a network is what's going to make that investment worthwhile as well. And Novocastrians love to complain about car parking, and I totally understand why. Until we have good, viable alternatives in terms of public transport, people are going to continue to drive as a preferred thing, and then therefore complain about parking, and we'll have traffic issues, particularly as the population grows. Modern cities have to invest in public transport as the way to overcome some of those challenges. We've got the potential to do that with Broadmeadow and make sure that the planning's done upfront and first, so that those new dwellings have great public transport from the get-go.
Who would you like to see as the first performer at this entertainment centre?
That's a good.
That's a big thing, isn't it?
Well, so. I don't know that it will still be big enough, but I reckon I'm a bit of a Swiftie. I reckon Taylor Swift coming to Newcastle would be absolutely extraordinary. It would go off.
It'd be a draw, Cainey.
I think a Kiss reunion. Shut up. AC/DC?
There's options.
Well, Kiss was going to play the Supercars, weren't they? And that got called.
They were. That was the COVID year.
Yeah. But look, there's a lot of questions also being asked. $3 million was spent on Smith Park.
Yep.
In Hamilton North. Now, when the site was earmarked as a flood retention basin for the Hunter Park project, so it's to be excavated to the depth of 2.4 metres along with Kentish Ovals, Magic Park, and now Myer Park. I think we got now, this is all off the back of the Knights Centre of Excellence complaining, and it was removed from the drainage plan, even though it's the closest property.
So more work needs to be done on this. Worth just acknowledging, the Broadmeadow strategy is a 30-year strategy. The reason that Broadmeadow isn't developed to a great degree at the moment is because flooding is the single biggest constraint of that site. It's going to take many tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in order to enable Broadmeadow, the vision for Broadmeadow to be realised, just in terms of upgrading drainage and making sure that the stormwater infrastructure is appropriate. Broadmeadow ultimately was once a big swampy wetland, and so building in that site is highly constrained. There was a proposal to use some of the existing playing fields as temporary detention basins. So in a really big storm event, so an April 2015 storm or a Pasha-Balka style of storm, you have somewhere for water to be temporarily detained before it releases back out to the environment and prevents flooding. That isn't inconsistent with the upgrades that the council's undertaken, but it's also a very long time away. Like, this isn't something that's been actively explored as the thing we're going to do tomorrow. It's, as Broadmeadow continues to develop, managing the amount of water that comes off that site and managing flooding is going to be the single biggest issue that needs to be addressed. It is one of the potential solutions that might assist in resolving that issue.
There is a lot of angst. I know that people from the Broadmeadow Magic Soccer Club, they're worried about Magic Park. Also, too, their feeder club, the Newcastle Suns, which play at Myer Park, they've both clubs have put so much time in their own money, especially Magic Park. A lot of volunteers have spent days, weeks, years getting it to what it is, and that's a nice little boutique, and again could be turned into a boutique stadium with money thrown at it.
Yes.
Myer Park, another one where they've put fences up, they put a grandstand in. It's pretty much like what Hamilton Olympic have done up the road, Newcastle Olympic, hard blood, sweat and tears, and they just feel like it's going to be thrown out the window.
I'm happy to work with them through this, and just note that these are concepts at the moment about how these issues will be addressed. There are a few of the potential viable options. There might be others. There is a long way to go before we see this style of disruption, and also probably very many years. Like, as I said, a 30-year vision. This is not work that is going to be undertaken immediately, and I'm confident that there is going to be a pathway forward where we can manage and mitigate some of those concerns and make sure that we get a good outcome. And I totally hear and understand the blood, sweat and tears and the significant effort that has been invested, and I really value that, and I don't want to diminish it in any way either.
Yeah, but that's the thing too, is that, again, does it mean that the Knights have more pull in regards to their Centre of Excellence, which they put a lot of money in, and the NRL into it? It's not sort of fair on the people that are going to get caught.
I hear that, and I'll just say that I don't think a final decision has been made, and there's certainly more work to be done, and I'm happy to work through those issues with those stakeholders.
And Johnson Park at Lambton, it was upgraded off the back of the Women's World Cup Legacy Fund, which was, which women's football club have, which women's football club have benefited from that? There's some that's got the belief that it'll be given to the Lambton Jaffers, a club that has no women's teams, to keep them quiet regarding an impending basketball stadium development.
So the Johnson Park works have only just been completed. I was out door knocking in Lambton over the course of the last few weeks. We've delivered a new playground down there. There's new lighting. We've done the drainage at the field. I've got to say, I don't know the plans in terms of what club will be likely to play there. In fact, the process that we go through in terms of allocating grounds across the whole city is that each club puts in their preference about where they might like to be located, and there's an enormous spreadsheet, as far as I understand it, where people are shuffled around so that those needs can be best matched to facilities. That's not a process that I'm involved in.
I mean, that basketball stadium, it's been a real hot hot potato as well. It's getting built on a floodplain. But it is desperately needed. There's no doubt. I mean, the old one is falling down. But again, it's a case of green space, residents. There's so much to weigh up.
And I hear those concerns from residents, and it was one of the first items that came to council after the 2024 election. I think it might have been either the September or the October council meeting of that year. I voted the same way that Dr. Kerridge voted with respect to the basketball stadium and raised the same concerns. I have publicly stated that I have concerns that need to be addressed with respect to traffic, parking and flooding on the Wallara Oval site. I think it's really important just to recognise that this is a state government project going through a state government planning process funded by the state government on state government-owned Crown land. And so council's role is really one of advocacy, and I'm advocating to make sure that those issues are addressed.
The amazing thing about it, on the other side of that, where these residents are in that section across the other side of the drain, there actually was a massive sporting field back in the 1920s and 30s. I should have got the picture of it, Dave. But it held soccer internationals there. Australia played China there, in that area where all those housing.
I didn't know that.
And that's the incredible thing about it, is that, that was there once. Now it's houses. Now the houses are blowing up because of it's and I suppose it's one of those things. It's like, not on my patch, it's all well and good. If it was in the next suburb, no one would be saying anything. But I suppose it means a lot more to the residents when they're right at the coalface.
Yeah.
And especially too, sorry to cut you off, the amount of traffic and parking they've got to put up with Jets games, Knights games, all that sort of stuff. It's probably gone, come on, we're on the brink here. Now you're going to put a basketball stadium sitting on our doorstep.
Yeah, I hear that. And so the other point that I want to make too is that it is undisputable that basketball require a new facility. The current facility isn't fit for purpose. My nephew plays basketball. I spend plenty of Wednesday nights over there. Every time it rains, the roof is leaking and there's buckets around galore. There is not enough. The facility isn't big enough given the scale to which basketball has grown. And that site, the state government are resuming that site in order to develop it for housing. So basketball have to go somewhere. Yeah. They've had 3 goes at trying to find an appropriate location. This is the furthest that they've progressed in any of those different sites, and I hear that there are significant limitations.
Do you
I
feel
have tried to find an alternate site, so I publicly raised the Hamilton North Gasworks site, for example, which is currently vacant. It was publicly owned. It's recently been sold, but it remains vacant. It's been remediated and it's a fully hard stand area. It doesn't have the same residential interface. Maybe that's worth exploring if the proposal at Lambton doesn't get up through the state government planning process that it's going through presently.
There was some sites in Lake Macquarie. It's not a case of use it or lose it. We want it, because I know the same thing happened on the Central Coast with the Central Coast Stadium. Back when there was 2 councils, Gosford and Wyong, there was the proposal that stadium was going to be built in Tuggerah. But because both councils were at war, like we said, what the Gosford Council said, no, we want it. We want it. You look at it, it is a picturesque stadium. It's a beautiful stadium right next to Brisbane Waters, but it's not it's almost like they've just plonked it in the middle and gone, now fix everything around it. But it was a case of, if we don't get it, Tuggerah's going to get it.
Yep.
It's not another case of that in regards to, because I think there was a site at Hillsborough as well that was, in Lake Macquarie.
So it had gone through a planning process there on Hillsborough Road at Warners Bay, and it was knocked back. So it was refused, and it was refused due to the traffic impacts at the time. That was why the basketball started looking around for other potential sites.
Well, you look at that ground near the crossroads at Glendale. It used to be an AFL ground, and it's just been sitting there doing nothing. Oh, it'd be perfect, but again, there's obviously red tape and all that sort of stuff. The New Lambton Heights landslip, we're just going from one bun fight to another, don't we? Quite possibly the biggest thing on Newcastle Council's mind at the moment. You'd agree?
Absolutely. And so, in brief summary, there's 19 dwellings that are impacted, 16 houses that have been evacuated, 44 residents that have been out of their homes for more than a year now. It is the biggest landslip in Australia's history that's impacted a residential community. I didn't realise until we received a report on the geotech that has been done.
Yep.
There has been land movement in some locations of 9 metres. It just extraordinary, unfathomable really to think about the degree of disruption and the impact that it's had on this community.
Some of those residents, though, are saying that there was signs of landslips in 2015, 2022 that council would have known about. Well, I mean, was it a case of not acting or...
So that wasn't the advice at the geotech. So the geotech has looked into this in some detail. There's a report, it's a few hundred pages long. It's available on the council website, and they considered the geological history of this area and also the history of previous landslips. They didn't identify that there was anything causal between any historic ground movement, which might have been quite local, and the scale of this land movement. In fact, they said it was something that was activated by that extraordinary East Coast low event that we had at the beginning of last year. That they've put it down to be connected entirely to that weather event rather than being anything historic. Of course, the front page of the Herald today, incidentally, is about mine grouting and the need for us to address mine grouting. This landslip, just to be clear, nothing to do with mine grouting, but I make the point. We're in a city where there is little issues in small pockets of neighbourhoods all the time as a result of the legacy of the environment and the mining history of our region. So a landslip in isolation, a small landslip, is not necessarily as alarming as something that has seen 19 dwellings made uninhabitable and 44 people out of their homes.
I mean, the stabilisation bill will stretch beyond 130 million. The site is still moving. With winter coming, more rain probably on the way.
Yep.
There'll be climate change.
Well, we'll make it worse, that's for sure. I'm not going to – look, I think it is one of my Greens colleagues tried to connect the landslip and climate change. I've got to say, that is an extraordinarily long bow to draw. I don't know that you can connect them that neatly.
We'll stick on that. It was just a quip before. But I can feel like it would be the most frustrating thing, or not frustrating, devastating thing. You've bought a house, you've got obviously you've got to pay the house off. You're still paying the repayments. You know, obviously there was the worry with the rates that's been extended now, but still it's almost like this isn't going to be fixed in 5 minutes. It's not going to be looking at some of those pictures, they will have to be demolished. I just can't see how you can rebuild, or to get what's got to be done underneath with that at the top. It's got to go. What I'm trying to say is in the future, now are you looking at areas that are very similar to that going, that could happen here. Should we be looking at these places, or are we jumping at shadows?
So we asked that is a really good question, and something that was asked of the geotech expert. His advice was that the specifics of the soil and the type of clay that is located in this location, and also the aspect of the land, are two important factors. It means that there aren't other locations in the city that are as exposed as what New Lambton was. So this site is fairly unique, and so I want to give that some degree of reassurance, and I'm not expecting we're going to have lots of different landslip issues pop up across the city. That's not to rule them out, but the advice that we've got from the experts is that this site was unique due to those factors. I absolutely agree with you about the timeline, and I feel for the residents that are impacted. It is also really complicated to work through these arrangements. We had some exceptional news just in the last week with Minister Janelle Saffin advising the state government will finally be stepping in and paying people's rents for the next 12 months to give a further period for us to work through the issues. Because what has happened is that of those people that have been moved out of their homes, many of them had their own private insurance. They'd dealt with their insurers. Some people have had the cost of the building itself paid out, not the land. And many of the insurance policies also pay for 12 months worth of rent of an alternate property with the idea that the owners would work through and then consider where they could move back in or rebuild.
I mean,
that 12 months is up, and so people were facing the prospect of paying both the rent on one hand, but also continuing to pay the mortgage on the land that's left at New Lambton on the other.
Even just with dealing with insurance companies these days, someone runs into your fence, the rigmarole just going through to get a new fence through it. This must be a nightmare as well, because there could be some that decide, we got to wait until what's going on. And again, this could be years, but you've still got to keep paying the bills for these insurance companies. And again, the pressure that must be on these people going to work, and the mental aspect of it as well.
Yes, no, you're dead right. And then how does council best support when you've got 16 different properties, a whole range of different conditions for each of those different owners. They've all got their different insurance arrangements with different insurers who pay out policies for different reasons. The work that we've done is that we have stepped in the absence of leadership from other levels of government to prioritise the geotech investigations to get a thorough understanding of the issue. And we are now seeing, as a result of having invested to get that work done, other levels of government, including the Reconstruction Authority, stepping in. I don't for a minute dismiss just how unbelievably stressful this would have been for anybody that owns property in that area. I have had regular contact with a number of the people that are impacted, as well as neighbours in immediate surrounding areas that are concerned and eager for additional information. So I've heard, continue to hear firsthand just how challenging the circumstances have been. This is an opportunity for government to step up because there needs to be coordinated leadership in order to address this issue. I
mean, even back in the 1940s, that area was called the Slip.
Right.
In regards to, there was pictures of landslides way back then as well. So, I mean, I suppose, again, but I can also see these residents, they're so frustrated, they're wanting to get, their own investigations and all that sort of, and sometimes that can hamper what you guys and the state government are doing. But you can also see their plight in the saying they feel like there's nothing getting done because of the time.
Yep. Well, I think that was true a few weeks ago and a few months ago. The conversations that I've had more recently, particularly since the state has stepped in, we had, as I said, Minister Saffin announcing the Reconstruction Authority coming to the table with the rental rebate. That is significant movement, and I've got to say thanks to her and to Jodie Harrison, the local state member, for their assistance, because that demonstrated a lot of movement compared to what had been happening for the period prior. I've got to say, council didn't cover itself in glory for some of those early days either. We, for example, had been advocating for some time for state assistance. The former Lord Mayor Kerridge forgot to send the letter. It took 11 months for a letter advocating to the state government for help to assist.
Why?
Why didn't it get sent? Well, just the Lord Mayor didn't act upon it. It wasn't until it was raised with him what had happened. Did we receive a response that was identified that the letter never got sent? I thought that was a pretty poor outcome. It certainly didn't set us up for success.
Were you aware of it on council? Were you aware that this hadn't been done, or not until right till the end?
Right. No, I raised it as soon as I became aware that it hadn't occurred.
Even, I mean, not just getting away from the landslip. I mean, there's sinkholes happening everywhere. I mean, what's happened with the Wall's End Bowling Club? It's and that had a sinkhole, didn't it? And it's never recovered. And beautiful big club. It was a thriving club. And it's just sitting there.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know the current status of it. So it's on Crown land. So it's been something that the state government had been addressing. I would be guessing to give you an update. I'm not sure.
Totally. This isn't just a gym. It's where limits get broken. A place where community comes together, sweat turns into strength, and every drop is progress. No excuses, no egos, just results. Join Fitstop Newcastle today, a start to a better you. Beaumont Street, at times another sinkhole in areas. Now, we've all been a fan of Beaumont Street, but now I actually feel unsafe even through the day, sitting there having a meal at the side. I'm seeing ice addicts going past, and they're off their nut. And I'm thinking to myself, if I had, my kids or... There's no way I'd go out at night in Beaumont Street because I'm seeing what's happening through the day. If I don't feel safe, I'm not saying I'm a warrior, but what I'm saying is that it's fallen from grace so much. And I know that we've been talking about the Opal Gates and all that stuff that was being proposed and all that sort of thing. I don't know whether Opal Gates would be the answer anyway. I just think it needs a thorough investigation because, again, that was a thriving street. That was the go-to for a meal, and I'm just seeing it just crumble.
Yep. Credit where it's due. I have backed and supported all of the motions that have come to council about this, and want to commend the leadership of Jenny Barry in particular, but also my colleague Paige Johnson and Tim Crackenthorpe as well, who have been raising this. You're right. There is no silver bullet that is going to address the issues that are happening on Beaumont Street, and anybody that claims that there is one thing that could be done that will address it is lying.
But do you feel for the businesses? I mean, they're paying
absolutely.
council rates there.
Well, and it's not just the council rates. Like, you want the businesses to flourish. It is in our interest that they do. And certainly I've seen the vacant shops increase in Beaumont Street and some of the antisocial behaviour that's happened. On the Opal Gates issue, we received advice from the police that they thought that was something that was meaningful that should be undertaken and changed. We've also listened to police advice when it comes to things like the facilities that are available in the James Street Plaza, the type of lighting that we've got in the city. Council will very shortly be considering a CCTV trial. That is contentious for some part. Some of us in Newcastle, we've had a long history of not supporting CCTV. My personal view is that it is worth us considering a trial and working with the police to negotiate how that would work. We've got a item coming to council fairly imminently in April in order to progress that.
I think CCTV is important, obviously, to find out what's going on. But I think the majority of these people are addicts. I don't think that's, when you're an addict, you're an addict. I don't think it's going to make them stop doing antisocial things. It's just not people just doing it. I'm sure that it does happen, being antisocial and breaking windows and all that sort of stuff, having fights. But this is different, and it's almost like that's not going to fix the core problem of people that are on drugs.
As I said, there is no single silver bullet, and it's going to require all of those support agencies, especially the health agencies. There's a whole bunch of NGOs that operate in that space. I mean, one of the issues, and the reason that Opal Gates has been raised in particular, is that tracing the impacts of the truncation of the rail line in Newcastle, it is not uncommon for areas at the end of rail lines to have antisocial issues, but there are methods that have been employed in cities internationally in order to manage and mitigate some of those issues. I think it's got to come from a place of empathy in order to support people that are experiencing hardship or are experiencing medical issues like addiction, in order to make sure that they get the help and the services that they need in order to resolve them. But also, it cannot detrimentally impact the community in the way that it does, and so the impacts on the businesses is of concern to me. And I have supported consistently the action that council can take in order to support resolving it, but it requires action from other levels of government as well.
I was at the intersection at Donald Street and Beaumont Street. Everyone was stopped because there was two women punching the tripe out of each other in the middle of the intersection. No one could move for 5 minutes, just watching this unfold. And I turned to my partner, Kelly, and I said, what is going on? What the hell is going on? Staying in Beaumont Street, Rainbow Crossing. Yep. I know Paige Johnson brought it back up last year. That's an example of one. Do you feel the gay community are more accepted now than ever before? Do we need a rainbow crossing to acknowledge?
I don't think it does any harm, and Newcastle has a pretty proud history of supporting the LGBT community. 75% of our community voted yes in the marriage equality postal plebiscite. It was the highest yes vote outside of anywhere in a major capital city in Australia. We have the amazing Newcastle Pride Festival that comes to Gregson Park in Hamilton every year. 30,000 people went to the last event. It was pretty significant and special. There's things. Council invests in lots of things in order to recognise, celebrate and reflect different parts of our community. I don't think this is a particularly egregious use of funds. If we're upgrading, the proposal is when we're upgrading Wobber Park near the Hamilton train station as part of the work that we were just talking about, addressing some of those antisocial issues, we should also look about how we upgrade it in a way where there's public art that celebrates diversity in the community. I think that, to be honest, that is probably a good thing in terms of making the space more inviting and welcoming and helping us to address some of the issues that we're experiencing. So I think it's something that we can support. I don't think it's egregious in any way.
Similar rainbow crossings like the one we just showed up there around Australia have come in at a cost anywhere between $15,000 and $50,000, depending on the road design, the paint, the thermal plastics materials, traffic engineering requirements. you think Paige should get a quote first to see how much it's going to cost before you get petitions?
Well, Paige is a traffic engineer, so I think has a good understanding of how much these things cost.
And that's great. But what I'm saying too is if you're going to get people to sign petitions, I think you should say, well, this is actually going to cost the ratepayer this amount of money. And I know she has in the past saying, well, the council spends $430 million in stuff. So this is a drop in the ocean. Drop in the ocean, Paige, it's still, people are doing it tough.
No.
And I could, God, I see medium strips that haven't been, that are this high at the moment that should be cut, I just think, I know a lot of gay people, men and women, and I've actually, leading up to this, I've asked them about it and they're like, fucking rainbow crossing.
Yeah, okay.
We really, like we've been accepted, it's not like we're, do you feel it's more the LGBT crowd that's wanting this more than the gay and lesbian crowd? And I'm talking about like the transgender, cross-dress, all that sort of, the other ones.
No, so
with due respect.
Yeah.
I just think, and we had Wayne Rogers on, who's a gay man, and he even said on this podcast he feels that the LGBT community are dancing on the coattails of the gay community.
Look, I think that is a contentious area that I'm going to take great care in avoiding. I have not experienced a difference in terms of community support from different elements of the LGBTQ plus community. In other parts of Australia, those communities are very separate and tend to act in isolation, and they don't always get along. That is not my experience in Newcastle. I find that the diversity of that rainbow spectrum actually work pretty well together, and things like the Newcastle Pride Festival that celebrates all of that diversity on the rainbow, that it's pretty unique that they're able to do that, because that's not the experience everywhere, and sometimes they get fractured off into different fractions. That's not what occurs here.
But I'm just sort of saying, do you think a rainbow crossing is going to make that much of a difference? Because again, I feel everybody's accepting these days. I mean, there is bigots, there is homophobes out there, but I think most people, again, even the gay people are quite like, well, we'd actually rather our rates go down a bit.
Council invests in public art in lots of different ways. We've just done an amazing Mitch Rev's mural at Merewether Beach in order to celebrate Surfest. It cost an equivalent amount of money to what we're talking about here for a potential crossing in Beaumont Street in Hamilton. We would be looking to deliver that proposal as part of works that council is already undertaking. So we're undertaking works in around Awabba Park and the Hamilton train station in response to the antisocial issues. I support us undertaking placemaking, looking at public art, thinking about how we stretch the dollar that we're already investing to go further and get a better outcome. So I don't think it should be seen as particularly contentious in that context, or that it's an additional cost that we weren't otherwise expending.
Personally, I mean, like I say, I just get back to the quote, it's like anything for your house. You get some quotes in or whatever. But I just think, I mean, if people want to sign that petition, but they also know how much it's going to cost, absolutely, roll it out, But I just think there should be a stepping stone before you actually get people to sign it. Well, maybe if they know how much it's going to cost.
Maybe we need to roll that out on all petitions, because I see lots of petitions for things that cost far more than the cost of a crossing.
Was there any petitions for the Queen's Wharf Brewery property, which is now also in? It's been 6 years and it's looking shocking there.
You'll be pleased to know that the demolition is extremely imminent, very, very imminent. I'm expecting hoarding to go up in the course of the next few weeks in order to see that demolition.
Because again, it's been sitting there. It was only just wasn't it just a kitchen fire that did this? I mean, could it have just been upgraded and released out again?
So excellent question, and I had asked that myself. Unfortunately, the very brief history of that building, it was built in 1988 for the bicentenary. The Queen came and opened it as part of those bicentenary celebrations. Money was tight at the time, and so when it was built, corners were cut. One of the things that people that remember that building would know, it had extraordinarily low ceiling heights. I'm a relatively tall guy, and I felt like I was going to hit my head walking in and out of that building. They cut corners. It had no lift. It had no separation between the ground floor and the upper floor. The nature of the fire, which was in the restaurant, I think it was operating as Blue Water Pizza at the time. I might be wrong, but the fire that caught in that downstairs kitchen area, tore up through the ducting and damaged both the ground floor and the upper floors. Millions of dollars worth of damage for a building that was only built in 1988 in order to have a 20-year lifespan. So we were already in years after it was meant to have concluded. The building wasn't fit to form in terms of other standards. It didn't have a lift, for example. So anyone that had ever gone to a function in the function centre upstairs, well, too bad for grandma or somebody that might have been not quite so mobile and needing a wheelchair to get in or out. There was no access. They had to be hauled up the stairs. It has taken a long time for us to get to the point of demolishing the building. I acknowledge that. Worth noting that fire happened during COVID, so there was a period actually when the building wasn't operating in any capacity. I acknowledge that it's taken a time. At the moment, the demolition has been held up because there is still the facilities that are utilised by Keolis Downer and Transport for New South Wales to operate the Stockton Ferry operate out of that building, and that's still current. We've been working through a process to relocate those offices, and we've got a new temporary office that is being constructed at Stockton in order to enable the ferry service to continue. Clearly, that's pretty critical for people travelling to and from Stockton. As soon as that new temporary office is in on the Stockton side, then we'll be right to be able to remove the western building of the Queen's Wharf complex and get on with the future of that site. You asked about petitions. There hasn't been a petition, as far as I'm aware, about Queen's Wharf specifically, but there has been a lot of community engagement, both about the interim uses. So we want to make sure that that site is interesting and utilised in an interim capacity while we work through what could go there in the longer term. There's been an EOI process recently with the private sector around what some future longer term uses of that site might look like. We're still working through the detail of that, and there'll be more community consultation to be undertaken. I don't want to rush the long-term outcome for that site. So one of my jobs on council is I'm the chair of the asset committee, so I've got oversight of this project. I think we want to achieve and aspire to a really great outcome for Queen's Wharf, but it needs to have backing and widespread community support. And so I think that once the urgent issue, which is this very dilapidated building, is removed, I think that we should take our time into considering and working through properly what goes there in the longer term.
I actually remember going there. It would have been 1989, Dave. It was a nightclub upstairs. It was called the QE2, and it's just when techno music came out. And I was busting the moves on the dance floor, let me tell you. And while we're at it, those ferries too noisy. You need to do something.
Yeah. I think a few residents of Wharf Road might agree with you. Maybe I'll get some angry emails after.
Do you know, is it funny when just we were talking about that area, we did stacks of stories at NBN on the Save Our Heavy Rail. I'm so glad it's been ripped up. It's such a game changer. It's so easy, the easy access. But we always used to have Save Our Rail. Always used to have to go to them to have their say. And the thing was, the president of Save Our Rail, I'd ring them up and I'd say to her, I forget her name.
Joan Dawson.
Joan Dawson.
She just turned 90, incidentally. Happy birthday, Joan.
Yes, happy birthday, Joan. But she'd say, it'll be about midday. And I said, okay, rightio. She says, I've got to catch a train to get there. I said, what do you mean? She goes, I live in Dungog. And I went, you're trying to save the heavy rail and you live in Dungog? And then she came to us with these, I love it. She came to us with all these plans that she drew up. She says, instead of the state government paying to get rid of this heavy rail, these plans are to build a bridge from Newcastle to Stockton. And I went, what? I said, how far of a run up are you going to have to? You're going to have to start the bridge from King Edward Park just to get a run up. And I said, and if you did it from the,
we combine it with the hill climb, it could be a fascinating event.
I was just like, wow. This is an important one, and because again, it gets brought up to me a lot, and it's a sensitive one. Letters to the editor scandal, the Newcastle Herald. What do you say to the residents of Newcastle who are still unhappy with the council's handling of the Scott Neelan letter writing scandal, considering Pinnacle Integrity's investigation only looked at one of the 19 letters that was sent to the Newcastle Herald? Now, it's also explained that Jeremy Bath has nothing to answer for. He was found not guilty in anything that was to do with this from the investigation. What I'm saying as a councillor yourself, were you happy with the investigation when, out of all those letters, only one was looked at?
As a councillor, I don't get an opportunity to have a say about the investigation. The only time an investigation would have come to us was if there was detrimental findings. In this event, there were no findings, and so the investigation concluded. I was the councillor that moved for us to proactively release the investigation report. That's now not something that ordinarily happens, but I thought it was important that we publicly publish everything that we as a council had been made aware of.
Do you find it?
I think it's important just to make an additional point, because there wasn't just one investigation into those letters. There were three. When former Lord Mayor Kerridge was elected, he promised there would be a review into council. That became the Davidson review. We agreed to do that in December 2024. It was a fairly significant review process, and it was finalised early last year, I think around March or April of last year, and in that report has been released and made public. It looked into the letter writing issue in a great deal of detail, and for the first time highlighted that it had not had just been the one investigation from Pinnacle Integrity, but there had actually been three, including an investigation by the Independent Commission Against Corruption, where the ICAC had determined that there were no adverse findings and no further action to be taken.
Yeah, Davidson Advisory also. What gets me is that do you know that the Newcastle Herald weren't even contacted in regards to this investigation?
Yeah, look, so I've read that. So,
but that's the thing. I find it amazing that for something so serious, the allegations, that the core people that it was about, that was the letter writing to the Herald, letters to the editor, you would think that a phone call, at least one, would be made to say, can we have a look at your side of things here?
Just to be clear, the Herald have indicated that they were never contacted by Pinnacle Integrity. They have never said that they weren't contacted by one of those other investigative bodies. So I just think it would be worth knowing the answer to that question before saying that the Herald weren't contacted. But yes, I have read that they weren't contacted by Pinnacle Integrity. That does seem abnormal to me, but I have to rely on the information that I was provided as a councillor, the conclusions of Davidson, the advice about the three investigations, not just the one, and the recommendation from Davidson, which was essentially, I don't know the exact quote, you might have it in front of you, was along the lines of Novocastrians need to move on. There has been a thorough assessment of these issues.
Yeah. The only reason, and again, obviously Jeremy Barth is a completely innocent man in all this. It's from the findings. But again, I just find that the actual investigation itself was so flawed in the fact that only one letter out of 19 is looked at.
I understand, but there are multiple investigations, and we don't know what was looked into in those other investigations in full detail. So I would err on the side of being quite cautious and relying on the outcomes of Davidson and the review that they undertook into the entirety, including the way complaints were made, that the way those complaints were assessed, managed, handled, and reported back through Office of Local Government and elsewhere.
Have you got your business cards printed out for being the mayor? Yeah,
absolutely not. I do not for 1 second think that I am not up for an enormous fight in order to be able to convince Novocastrians that I'm the right person to fulfil the office of Lord Mayor. I'm out there every day talking to Novocastrians, understanding what matters to them, making sure that I am bringing a policy platform to this election that reflects the views and wishes of Novocastrians, investing in things, especially in our suburbs, and explaining to Novocastrians who I am too, the background that I have, the leadership that I've shown in the time that I've served in civic office, and the kind of things that I would intend to do if I was lucky enough to be elected Lord Mayor in April.
If you become Lord Mayor, will you come back on with the mayoral chains on?
That's a good question. I would love to.
Laurie did it.
I would love to come back on. The mayoral chains in Newcastle are kept in a safe. I have been able to access those chains only on one occasion, and they were very quickly taken away from me.
Really? So Laurie brought them in. He just sat them here and went, "Here they are. I'm going to put them on."
So if I'm allowed to take them out of the building, I will 100% come and visit visit you, regardless of what happens with the election. To be honest,
Laurie's wife still hates him because he's now got better jewellery than her.
Yeah, right. I don't know, how do you go with the audio? The rattling of the chain might be a bit off-putting for the listeners.
It wasn't too bad. He didn't wear it the whole time though.
He came in like a gladiator, wasn't it? Like a Braveheart with his kilt and everything. It was brilliant. The sporran. Oh God, Declan, thanks for joining me. Good luck with the election, and I hope we can get you back on at a later date and talk more.
Cheers.
Council politics.
Thanks for talking. I look forward to that further conversation as well.
Thanks, Declan.